clearly visible in your line of sight from your
Correct.
curved wall of your driveway, I mean your garage, right?
Correct.
Okay, and how close to the road were they standing when you saw them?
And they came in the driveway.
Yes, ma'am.
They were standing almost on the lawn, the grass, in the driveway, close to the grass.
And close to witness again.
Right.
I'm going to show you those photographs again. And then I'm going to ask you if you would to mark with this pen where you saw them at.
Now, I'm not sure. And they were like, and they're like, oh, you know, kind of like the truck them way. Right there or somewhere.
So they were standing in one, at some point in time, they were standing in the
Yeah,
grass over there.
yeah, because they could see the road or the fence not blocking.
Very good.
And somewhere close with that.
All right, and just for the record, Mr. Bush, he has put a, looks like a check mark. And I have one that just to show the little one.
And which exhibit did she mark on?
All three. Your Honor, may I publish these to the jury? right, very good. So the two young men have come out to the yard and are standing at some point in time in the driveway or the side yard of a two-story home over at the corner of Aspen. And at that point in time, Mr. Leverett pulls up in his truck. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, very good. And I think you told us earlier that just to try to establish at or about what time that may have been, that up at 5:30, about 5 minutes or so, you hear all the yelling. Yelling lasts a couple of minutes. 5:37, you go in the house for a couple of minutes, come back out at 5:39. When you come back out at 5:39, you see the truck pull up. Very shortly thereafter.
Correct.
All right. So 5:39 to 5:40, you see the truck pull up out in front of the yard. And Mr. Leverett gets out of his truck.
Correct.
And when Mr. Leverett gets out of his truck, I think you told us about what he did, right? He got out,
Correct.
went into his yard, he yelled. What was it that he yelled?
Justin, I hate you. You're my friend.
Now, were you still sitting in the garage all this time?
Yes.
Did you ever come outside the garage out to the street?
No, sir.
So would it be fair to say that the young men who were standing outside the house over at 17 Aspen Street, that's where the two-story house is, that they would have actually been closer to Mr. Leverett than you were?
Correct. I believe so.
Okay. And Mr. Leverett goes into his home. I'm asking.
Correct.
Okay. And when he comes back out of his home, how long do you think he may have stayed there?
A couple of minutes.
All right. So he goes into the house. It's a couple of minutes. He comes back out, and that would put it somewhere around 5:42 in the morning. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Comes out of his house, and when he comes out of his house has a gate on the front of it, does it not?
Correct.
And did he come out of the gate,
Yes.
out into the road,
Correct.
and then down the street, but closer to the number 17 house over there?
Correct.
Close to where the two boys were standing.
Correct.
All right, very good. And when he got closest to you, would have been when he was right here in this area, is that right? He pulls his truck up, goes in the house, comes out, walks, so that when he got right here, that would have been the closest he would have been to you.
Correct.
The boys were standing by that time right here by this basketball goal, right?
Correct.
There's a little basketball goal that you marked on
Right.
there. They had moved from the driveway over to the basketball goal. So when he walks by them, by the boys, he's within just a few feet of them, is he not?
Correct. Correct.
Now, during this period of time where you heard Mr. Leverett yell out and you watched him come out, what was he carrying when he came out?
A flashlight and something long.
Let's start with the flashlight for a moment. Was the flashlight on?
The flashlight was on.
Okay. And he was carrying a long object with him.
Correct.
And over the last 3.5 years, we've talked on a number of occasions, and I think you've always said you don't know what it was.
Correct.
That it could have been a bat, could have been
I
a
don't
gun.
know.
Don't know. Long though.
Correct.
You described it as maybe about 4 feet long.
Correct.
Okay. So he's carrying a bat and a shotgun. Did you make any observations about how quickly or how slowly he was moving when he was heading back up the street?
Normal. He was not running, walking, normal.
All right. And at some point in time, if you're sitting in your garage, it does not take very long for him to go out of your sight, does it? Mr. Leverett?
Correct.
If you're,
Correct.
you're looking out your curtain wall going this direction, when you get right about in here, you lose the
I
ability
lost
to
that.
see. Right? So from your curtain wall, you can see parts of the two-story house and you can see Mr. Leverett's, but that's really all you can see.
Correct.
So
Correct.
when he left your vision, heading back up Aspen to the east of your house, or up East Aspen, were you able to see where he went to?
No, sir. He was out of my view.
All right. And when you previously told Mr. Will in response to his question that he went up to my sister's house at 13 Aspen Street, you couldn't see that?
No, sir. I don't know where he went.
So that was just an assumption.
Correct.
And as a matter of fact, you believe that the noise that you heard earlier was coming further away from your sister's house? wasn't it?
Correct. I thought somewhere behind her house in the woods.
And did you believe that in fact he was headed back to the direction of the noise?
Yes.
At some point in time, well, strike that. Did you hear Mr. Leverett make a statement to the young men standing out near the basketball goal?
Yes.
And what statement did he make to them?
Called 911. Could be bleeding to death.
And when he made that statement, that was at or about the time that he would have been closest to where you were.
Correct.
Could you hear him clearly?
Yes.
And
He yelled it out.
so he was letting everybody know.
Correct.
Did you form any kind of an opinion at that time about his sobriety?
Yes. He sounded like he was intoxicated.
He walks past he comes back out of the house at or about 5:42. How long after he walks out of the house is it before you hear multiple shots?
A couple seconds. Couple minutes only, and pow, 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 pow. So many. I didn't know how many. It was a lot.
You heard a lot of
A
shots.
lot.
And were they very fast?
Very fast. Pow, 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 pow.
How long do you think the firing lasted?
Not long at all. Less than 5 minutes. It was just pow, 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 so quick.
All right, so is that what you heard? Pow, 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 pow?
Correct.
And then it's over.
And then silent. Then I went into the house. I got scared. Well, I got scared.
Now, you mentioned that your sister lives across the street at 13 Aspen, is that correct?
Correct.
And you have a son,
Correct.
and where was he on that particular
He
night?
was with my sister, Barbara Meadows, spending the night sleeping.
And is that David Royal?
Correct.
So David was sleeping the night with his aunt,
Correct.
Barbara,
Correct.
over at 13.
Correct.
And do you have a nephew by the name of Danny Meadow?
Correct. Yes, I do.
And was Mr. Maddow staying there as well?
Yes.
How long had Mr. Maddow been staying there?
A couple months.
And what was the reason that he was staying there?
He has a home on Aspen Street, next to Brian, It's foreclosed, in foreclosure.
All right, so,
So he moved out with his mother temporarily.
so would it be fair to say that you heard the shots, but you did not see what actually happened over at 13 Aspen?
Correct.
And that would mean, of course, that you did not go back to the back window and look out across the street and see what occurred.
Not right away, but when it turned daylight, I went and looked out the window. I was afraid to go outside.
All right, Your Honor, that's all I got. Thank you.
Any further examination by the
Just a
defendant?
couple.
All right, ma'am, I know you testified that there aren't any streetlights out in that area, but on the night in question, you indicated that Mr. Leverett had the porch light on in his house.
Correct.
And I think you also said that that two-story house that I think's been pointed out with the laser, it also had the light on.
Correct.
So when you testify about seeing Mr. Leverett come up, going into the house, coming out with what you saw as a long object and a flashlight, would it be fair to say that because of the porch light on the two houses, you got a good view of what was going on?
Correct.
Now, how long had you known Mr. Leverett?
Ever since, okay, I stayed with my mom 2 years, I've known him that long.
And you had spoken to him on occasion?
Yes, I've cleaned his house a couple times.
So when you say that he sounded like he was intoxicated, you were able to form that opinion because you would talk to him on other occasions?
Correct.
He wasn't intoxicated?
Correct.
Now, just so it's absolutely clear, when you saw Mr. Leverett leaving his house and walking down the street, he was heading in the direction towards 13 Aspen Street, 11 Aspen Street, and 9 Aspen Street, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, I don't have anything further.
Re-examination, Mr. Wells?
No, ma'am.
All right, before I discuss how we want to deal with this particular witness, court reporter has a request. How do you spell your first name, ma'am?
Okay, M-A-R-I-A-N-N,
One word?
one word.
All right. And what is counsel's position regarding releasing Ms. Fitzgerald from her subpoena?
She may be released.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Valreno?
Agreed, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Fitzgerald, you are released from your subpoena. You will not be called back to testify. You are subject to the instruction I gave you on Friday about not discussing the case until the trial is over, but you are free to leave at this time.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Judge, can we get a break real quick?
It doesn't need to be on the record.
Okay.
State's next witness.
Daniel Meadow.
Hallway to Ms. Fitzgerald.
You can be in the office. Just a second.
your name and spell it for the record.
Daniel J. Meadow, D-A-N-I-E-L, last name M-E-D-O-W.
Can you take the witness stand? As you're getting seated, sir, I'm going to instruct you on a procedural rule that the court is imposing at this time. It is called a rule of sequestration. What it means is that you cannot interact with anyone other than the attorneys in this case until the case is over. In terms of jurors, you identify them by the plastic badges they're wearing on their shirts. And you can't have any contact with any other witnesses or discuss your testimony in any way other than with the attorneys involved in this case. Should you violate that instruction, not only could you be stricken as a witness in this case, you could potentially face court proceedings. Do you understand that?
Just for the record again, Your Honor, Mr. Meadow.
And I just want to know, I've heard your name said a couple different ways. Is it Meadow or? Meadow. It is Meadow. Okay, just want to make sure, but it is a joint witness, so we'll use those procedures. Mr. Will, when you're ready, you may inquire.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, sir. You have to sit up to that microphone, okay? Let's try that again. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Good.
Good. Just tell us your name, please.
Daniel Joseph Meadow,
And how old are you, Mr. Meadow?
34.
Where do you currently live?
I'm at 805 East 13th Street in Poplar.
And how long have you lived in that area? Give or take.
3 months?
Is there a time that you lived over on Aspen Street in Daytona Beach?
Yes, sir.
Did you live at that address, or excuse me, did you live at 13 Aspen Street for a short period in October of 2011?
Yes, sir.
Is that your mother's house?
Yes, sir.
Did you grow up in that house?
Yes, sir.
Did you come back to live in that house again as an adult for a while?
Yes, sir.
I'll point to the map there next to you. You can see the red dot. Is that 13 Aspen right there?
Yes, sir.
The one with the kind of off-colored red driveway?
Yes, sir.
And that's a good thing to mark it by, right, is the red driveway?
Yes, sir. And you can also tell the aluminum thing I actually built on the patio.
The patio out on the back porch there, this aluminum porch?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And at some point that becomes involved in this case, right?
Yes, sir.
You were home on the morning of October 29th, 2011, there at 13 Aspen Street.
Yes, sir.
Tell us what you were doing in the early morning hours and who was there.
I was there sleeping. My cousin was there, David Royal, and my mother was there.
And was David Royal spending the night, so to speak?
Yes, sir.
Was there any particular reason for that, or was it just because you guys were hanging out?
No, well, my house at 16 Aspen was going through foreclosure, and we lived together, worked together, and when the house was in foreclosure, we were staying at 13 Aspen at the time.
And David's mother is Mary Ann Fitzgerald, right?
Yes, sir.
In fact, you just passed her in the hallway.
Yes, sir.
And that's your aunt?
Yes, sir. That's David Royal's mom.
Right. And Mary Ann Fitzgerald lived at that home right there, 13 Azalea,
Yes,
at
sir.
the time that this all took place.
Yes, sir.
Do you know Wayne Greenlaw?
I know of him. I've seen him around. He lived 2 houses down.
Did he live at number 9 Aspen, just 2 houses away from your mom?
Yes, sir.
Had you seen him in the neighborhood prior to this day?
No, sir.
No, I mean, over
Oh,
the
yeah, yes,
years,
sir.
had you
Yeah.
come to know him?
Yes, sir.
Do you see him in court today?
Yes, sir.
Could you point at him and tell us what he's wearing, please?
Black suit.
The gentleman there in the middle.
Yes, sir.
And do you know his brother Ray Greenlaw?
I know of him, but I didn't personally know him.
Had you ever seen him in the neighborhood prior to this day?
I've seen him out front of their house before.
Do you see him here in court today?
The guy there.
Again, the
Over there.
gentleman in the middle?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for standing. Had you seen both of those 2 gentlemen around the neighborhood prior to October 29th, 2011?
Yes, sir.
Had you gotten to be friends with them, or even better, why don't you describe your relationship with the 2 of them?
I mean, every time driving home, you'd see them every once in a while in the front yard. I'd let them use a chainsaw of mine. My cousin let him borrow the ladder to get off his roof one time. Other than that, I never really talked to him.
Just neighborly kinds of stuff.
Yes, sir.
Let me talk with you about Brian Leverett and Justin Riley. Do you know those two names?
Yes, sir.
Let's start with Justin Riley. How do you know Justin Riley?
Just friends in the neighborhood.
How long have you been friends in the neighborhood?
7, 8 years at least.
From now or from the time back then?
Before then, sir.
So 10, 11 years by now.
Yes, sir.
And how about Brian Leverett?
I've known him as long as I bought the house that I had to that went into foreclosure, so about 4 years prior to the incident.
How would you categorize your relationship with those two?
Brian, really good. We were neighbors, fished, hunt together. Justin, I'd run into occasionally at the little parties at the pond that we would have and stuff like that. But Brian's more of a friend.
So Brian's your friend.
Yes, sir.
Does Justin rise to the level of a friend, or is he more of an acquaintance?
Kind of in between.
Okay. You're comfortable enough with him, and you have a friendly relationship.
Yes, sir.
Very good. I'd like to turn your attention now to the early morning hours of October 29th when you and your cousin, your mom, were in the house. Around 5:30 or so in the morning, you're awake. Could you tell us what caused you to be awake?
I heard something bang, like somebody banged on my window.
Okay, let's talk about where your window is. Where do you sleep in that residence there, number 13? Here, you can get up and point if you like. Okay, so your bedroom is the northeast corner of the house. The room closest to the street and the room closest to the Greenlaw residence.
Opposite side.
I'm sorry, Greenlaw lives right there at number 9, right?
Okay, yeah, you're right.
And so your bedroom would be closest to the street and closest to the
Yes, sir.
Greenlaw residence?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you heard banging, you said? Please proceed.
Then after I heard the banging, I got up, I walked to the kitchen, to the addition part of the house, the add-on, where my cousin was sleeping. He said he heard some banging too, sounded like gunshots. And then he kicked on the back patio light. We didn't see anything.
What did you expect to see when you turned on the light?
Anything. We didn't know what was going on. We both were awakened.
Is it routine to have gunshots in your neighborhood?
Occasionally, you know, people, like I say, there's a lot of bears in the neighborhood and stuff like that. I mean,
So a couple of gunshots aren't out of character.
no, sir.
And you guys live out pretty well in the woods, right?
Yes, sir.
Those are the woods behind the house, and it's pretty rural.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so 2 or 3 gunshots wouldn't necessarily be anything to cause you an alarm.
Yes, sir.
You turn on the lights, you see nothing. Then what?
And then David kicked the light off.
Okay.
So I proceeded to walk back to my room. Something was telling me to turn around to kick the light back on. Didn't hear anything in between that, just something was telling me to turn the light on. I turned back, turned the light on, and that's when I seen Justin Riley hanging over my fence, covered in blood.
How well did you have the opportunity to see him? Was it well
See
illuminated?
Justin?
Yeah.
The light lit up good enough where you could see him.
At that point, could you tell what was wrong with him?
Just that he was covered in blood.
And what was your response?
What the hell happened?
Aside from your thought, what did you do?
I ran to him and was asking what's going on, and he said my neighbor was trying to kill him. He didn't say a particular name or anything, just said your neighbor. I'm thinking both of my neighbors on both sides are elderly ladies that I grew up with ever since I was 4 or 5 years old. And I'm thinking, you know, what neighbor are you talking about? And we walked to Justin. David ran inside, grabbed a towel, and we both met Justin in the back, wrapped the towel around his arm, and at that time, I heard the chain link fence.
Well, before you get there, let me show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit J for identification purposes. recognize these photographs and what they depict?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do they depict your backyard and your kitchen and Justin Riley on the tape that we're discussing?
Yes, sir.
Judge, if there are no objections, state will move J and evidence to state's next.
Mr. Lyons?
No objection. No objection, Your Honor.
It'll be State's Exhibit J for identification will be admitted as State's Exhibit 5.
Before we move off the subject of Justin Riley, I'd like to talk with you about what we see here in State's Exhibit 5. Go ahead and go through those pictures with us, if you would, please, starting in the lower left-hand corner where the white baseball cap is. Tell us what it is that we see.
See his hat in a pile of blood.
Where is that, sir?
At his own patio.
Your house.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's the back patio area behind your house where Justin Riley was brought into the home.
Yes, sir.
And
Where you see the green matting is the part that you're getting close to the inside part of the addition part of the house. The bottom right hand is the area to get to that on the bottom left.
so that goes further out into the yard.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, you can see the red fence there in the corner of that photograph, right?
Yes, sir, and that's the fence that Justin was hanging over.
And several slats are broken where Justin had broken.
Yes, sir.
And again, his blood is on the papers.
Yes, sir.
And the picture above that one, is that your kitchen?
The top right?
Yes, sir, the top right?
Yes, sir. That's where Justin was brought to and laid there.
And we'll get to that in just a few minutes, but that's his resting place with the home.
Yes, sir.
That's his clothing, his blood.
Yes, sir.
And in the top left, that's Justin Riley at the hospital.
Yes, sir.
And the injury to his left arm is what caused all the blood in the house that morning.
Yes, sir.
Talk with us for a few minutes about, you said that you see Justin, you and David get a towel, you rack him up, you're starting to bring him into the home, and you hear a chain link fence rattle.
And that was on the opposite side of the bedroom I was in.
Okay. Now, the house where you were, 13, has neighbors on both sides, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and this house right here, that's Natalie Adams, right?
Yes, sir.
She's lived there for a long time, she's an elderly woman. And there was no activity with respect to Natalie Adams' house, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now talk with us about this side. This is Mary Cassell, right?
Yes, sir.
Mary Cassell is a registered nurse,
Mm-hmm.
and she's lived there a lot of years as well.
Ever since I was, as long as I can remember.
Okay. Around Mary Cassell's house is a chain link fence around the backyard, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and does that fence eventually attach to your picket fence in those photographs?
Yes, sir.
While you're standing in the backyard helping with Justin, you say you hear the fence rattle. Is that Mary's fence?
Yes, sir.
Tell us what happens after you hear Mary's fence start rattling.
I asked if that was Mary because, like I said, she was a registered nurse and she could help Justin if it was her. And I said it 2 or 3 times, you know, Mary's at you, Mary's at you. No response. And then I heard my friend Brian Leverett, say, no, it's Brian. And he said, your neighbors are trying to F and kill Justin.
Now, he didn't say effing, right? He actually said the word?
Yes.
Okay. You can continue to abbreviate. I don't need you to.
Okay.
Okay. So he says your neighbors are effing trying to kill Justin.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What was his state of mind like? How did he seem to you mentally?
Scared.
And how about Justin?
Justin was, like I said, I left him when I heard that chain link fence. That's where I went through the addition part of the house, through the kitchen, to the carport, and I met Brian face to face.
Okay, well, before we get to meeting Brian, how did Justin seem mentally?
He was in and out of consciousness. He didn't really know what was going on.
Was he scared?
Oh yeah, he was
Was he
scared.
panicky?
Yes, sir.
Did he keep talking about your neighbors?
Yes, sir.
What was he saying about your neighbors?
He just said, your neighbors are trying to kill me. Where's Brian? Neighbors are trying to kill me.
Did he ever tell you in what way they were trying to kill?
No, sir.
He never told you that they had cut him with a machete?
No, sir.
Did Did they ever tell you that they had hit him with a beer bottle in his face?
No, sir.
Give me just one moment, please.
Mr. Will, we were going to take our mid-morning break in the next 5 minutes or so. Would it help to take it now?
No, I think I've got my hands on what I need,
Okay.
Judge. I appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Meadow, do you remember giving a statement to the police back on the morning of October 29th, 2011?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you think that your memory and recollection as to the events of that day would have been more clear back then than they are now?
I would imagine so.
Probably, okay. I want to show you page 29 of the transcript of that interview. I'd like you to go ahead and read page 29, lines 4 down to line 13. Just to yourself, and out loud.
9 to what?
Lines 4 to line 13, the lines that are on the side. Take that back away. Thank you, sir. After reading that portion of the transcript, does it refresh your recollection as to what you told the police that morning?
Yes, sir.
And did you tell the police that you kept saying?
John, I think this calls for hearsay now.
All right, we're going to take our mid-morning break, and counsel and I will discuss that objection off the record now, outside the earshot of the jury. Jury subject all prior instructions, you are on recess until 10:35. You're also on recess. Just subject to the court's previous instructions indicated. Yes, sir. Everyone else may be seated. All right, Mr. Ballerino, in support of your objection?
Yes, Your Honor, it's our position that this is hearsay. I think we started on page 29, line 4 through, line 7, but we're starting at line 4 saying at least help me or call 911 or whatever. I'm not objecting to that as hearsay. But I do object to hearsay, the witness testifying that Justin said, it starts at page, line 12 says, because Justin said he shot at him.
I'm sorry, Jim, I think we have a different transcript. This is the picture that I'm looking at. Here's what it came back.
Actually, I've got two copies of the same transcript.
Yeah, I think that's what, I think I had the same problem. I'm gonna find it a minute ago. But the red folder is the one I'm referencing.
Okay, I guess the way it was originally typed out by the previous court reporter, the pages are different than from the next court reporter. But I would object to the hearsay. It starts with line 4, investigator 1, and then he said he cut him with, and Mr. Meadow says machete, well, he said axe and machete, so I don't know. And then the investigator says, okay, then Mr. Meadow says, if I'm not mistaken, he did say something about getting hit with a beer bottle too. Investigator 1 says, Justin got hit with a beer bottle. Mr. Meadow says, yeah, I mean, dude, I was dead asleep, you know what I'm saying? All of a sudden, you know, all this happened within minutes, you know what I mean? I was just, and then they go on talking about hearing Justin Riley at defense. So it's our position that any testimony that Mr. Meadow gives in relation to what he was told by Justin Riley regarding the substantive issues in this case, being hit with an axe or a machete or being hit with a beer bottle constitutes hearsay.
Any further support for that objection by counsel for Wayne Greenlaw? Okay, response, Mr. Hall?
Judge, it's an excited utterance by Mr. Riley made or at or just about the time of the machete attack before he had the opportunity to affect the testimony in a way that would be more flattering to him. I know it's important with the excited utterance, but it's an excited utterance. He had just been attacked by a man with a machete. He said that the neighbors were trying to kill him. He was bleeding all over the place. And he was relaying to this witness what had occurred just moments before.
Any response to that?
Also, it's our position that whatever Mr. Meadow would also constitute hearsay. There's no evidence that it was an excited utterance. I think Mr. Meadow said he was going in and out of consciousness, so I think for the reasons that we've argued that this testimony is objectionable, it should not be admitted.
I'll overrule the objection and allow, to the extent it's been offered, you didn't even really ask him to say what those words were, just asked him which is it. Did that refresh your recollection? On examination by defense, you can address the differences in his memory today and what he stated after review of that transcript. But on the basis stated in a legal objection, I will overrule the objection. All right, anything else we need to address?
No, ma'am.
All right, we're in recess until 10:35.